The goal of this meeting is not to try and groom every issue we're about to look at. The goal is to make sure that the following questions have been answered. Are the requirements clear enough? Do we know the work boundaries? Has all the solution validation and research been completed? And start the discussion on ways that we can break this down into smaller logical components. I don't want that to be confused with the idea of creating sort of implementation subtasks. This would be more a discussion with the PM about the entire scope and if there's ways to make that into smaller MVPs. I will go ahead and jump into the first issue unless anyone has any questions or previous. One thing that we need to make time to do, and I'm not sure if I'm prepared or if Matt is, if there's any previous items from last week. Matt, do you have anything or should we just jump right in?
I think the only one that I had was the one you and I touched base on, Lindsay, to see if it needed to come back into this meeting, but it sounded like it was already going forward for grooming.
Yep, it already got assigned off to Daniel for grooming, and that was around the exportable CVS reports, right? Okay. So we're still, go ahead.
Sorry, one more thing. From our discussion in Slack yesterday, do we need like a new label or differentiator for in-process, queued, whatever?
Bring up Lucas. So we've got planning breakdown right now, which kind of represents two different parts of this process. It's this discussion as well as grooming. So a differentiator in the issues to say this we've accepted this in our planning breakdown was what was being suggested.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of just using grooming since that's kind of the next step anyway.
So we just sign it off to somebody in a grooming state once we've made it through the criteria of our planning breakdown, and we all feel pretty comfortable with it. I don't see any objections. Yeah. I think the ticket we were just talking about with exportable CVS is a good example. I can go ahead and add that grooming label, but it's one that we discussed during the call. There was a little bit of question in the end about whether we'd made it through everything and what Matt's indicator was of, do we need to bring this back up again? So that would have made it clear to him. So it solves that problem.
And I think everyone's on the same page on this, but just to be clear, this would be this is not a workflow label. Workflow is still planning breakdown. This is just a label applied during a subset of the planning breakdown stage. Cool.
I'm looking at Matt because I see him making that eye roll thing, making sure it makes sense to him.
That's right. It's not an eye roll. I look up because that's where the answers are.
The answer's written up there.
It's my thinking face. Yeah, I don't know, Lucas. I almost kind of thought maybe like a workflow label would be appropriate for this because it is a distinct step in between like the planning breakdown and then, because right now we're just using the inference of if there's not a weight on it, then it's not done. But then I feel like scheduling should be once the grooming has completed and there is the weight on it. So yeah, I don't know. It's hard to tell just by looking.
And given the amount of time we have and the fact that we want to get through 3 issues, I don't think we're going to get this resolved right now. I think we should probably take this conversation back to Slack. I think making a workflow label is a lot more effort, or workflow change is a lot more effort than just adding a label. So we could experiment around with adding the label for now and then, decide if it makes more sense to add the label, or, Matt, if you want to talk about this again in the Slack channel, we can go through the bigger effort. I feel like if we're going to add workflow labels, it's got to fall into the bigger product workflow. So sorry to cut that off. I think it's a really good topic and we'll get it resolved. But so far we've only been able to make it through 2 of these issues in any one of these meetings. And I think that we could do 3 today. I thought I had them in order. Did I? Hold on. Visual. Yep. Okay. So let's start with the top one. So Matt, in the elevator spiel, you want to describe the intent of this issue?
Sure. And I'll let Andy jump in too. I mean, this one is more visual than anything else. So you can see from the top, it is bringing things in line with pajamas and our own style guide's probably not the right word. Andy, help me out. What am I struggling with? Our visual design assets.
Correct. Yeah, this is it's a rip and replace of our current badges with new badges. I just actually had a call with Lucas Eipert on consolidating the issues that have been posted towards the tail end of this description. So I think we'll be set there. They don't need to be defined by where, just because it's a global change. So we'll just expect way less issues connected to this. That makes sense.
So make sure I understand, Andy. So we've got this bigger initiative around changing the labels to be aligned with the GitLab design approach, and all of these are sort of the implementations of that, or the cutover to those new visuals. Is that right?
Yeah.
So what is
and
this? Oh, go ahead.
And they're just defined by location. So what we can do is anywhere where we're changing the badge, we'll just have one issue for it instead of in lists and MR reports and all those things. And then anywhere where we're changing something aside from the badge, like we have colors that we want to change to, we'll have a separate issue for that. So expect those changes to happen. They're actually happening now, I think. So nothing to be worried about. I think it actually just cleans up what to expect for how things will get processed.
All right, I open the floor to questions, discussion. I'm looking at Sam and Paul to see if you guys, it seems like a very front-end heavy ticket or issue, and I don't see Daniel here.
So two things I'd say on this. One, 99%, if not 100% of these, when we change that one component, they'll all change. So this should be relatively small. And two, the 1% where it won't change is the vulnerability list that we've been doing as part of first class vulnerabilities. But the good news is it's already done there, so we don't need to change it. So if anyone is picking that up, look at the vulnerability list. All your styles are already there. If you want to look at them, and then we should just be able to port that over to the, I can't remember what it's called. It's called like vulnerability badge or something like that. There's a component in Vue that we can use that should update everywhere else.
Awesome. You cut out a tiny bit there, Sam. I think we caught the guts of what you were saying, but it sounds like based on this, we are able to say confidently that we've answered these poorly colored questions, and we can move this over to grooming to sort of take it to that next step that you were just describing.
Yes, I may have also accidentally groomed it and said that it's really easy as well.
Excellent. I love the term groom to completion. So if you want to go one step further, Sam. No. All right. Okay. So we'll move on. I'm just going to go to the next tab, and Matt, we can keep track, of, I don't know if there's an indicator they're supposed to put on right now to say, do we put the label on at this point to say it's ready for grooming? I think is what I just don't want to lose the fact that we just all agreed that this isn't okay.
I also put a note in the doc.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks, Matt. Second issue. Issues created from the security dashboard should link to specific file versions and master branch instead of the correct branch.
I'm not quite, what does it mean by correct branch?
So this link is it's a relative link rather than an absolute one. So if you create an issue, on a branch, a vulnerability from that branch will point to master, as opposed to the feature branch where the vulnerability is. So a feature branch does not get merged. We're still pointing at the wrong URL.
But
Does that?
isn't it the point of having this issue for later investigation? So later on, the branch would not be there anymore, and that would be a 4.4 anyway. So I guess it's more complex than that. You see what I'm talking about?
Ideally, I think the way it would work is it would point to the branch, and then on merge, the issue link would get updated to master. Or if it's pointing to a relative SHA, it will always point to the same one.
Yeah. Ideally, but it's not the case today. And it can be a permalink either if you squash the commits. So that won't work. Guess we need a little bit more investigation on this one.
So is someone willing to get this assigned to them to follow up on any of the details that we need. This is obviously not something that Matt's going to provide clarification, as he didn't drive this. This was a defect that was reported, which kind of is a bit of an odd example for planning breakdown. Is this URL generated in the back end?
I think it is.
I'm looking at who I can pick on. So it's basically like Jonathan or Lucas. Would one of you be able to take this on as a grooming activity going forward? It doesn't feel like something we're going to resolve here in this meeting as part of a discussion.
I'm looking to see what I already have on my list here.
And I guess before you do that, Matt, do we understand the priority of this? Is this something that we want to get groomed going? I mean, obviously it's in 12.9 right now, but at a P3, S3, just confirming this is something that should be in this upcoming iteration?
Yeah, so my reasoning for keeping it here is when we release the first class vulnerabilities work, it's going to carry forward. So we're sort of almost reintroducing an existing bug into the redone functionality. It just seems like a good time to handle it. I want to make sure everybody also saw Ross had a lot of comments on the issue, and then he left them in the planning document as well. He was already kind of looking into this.
And we could also ask Ross to help clarify any of these points if folks want to verbalize their points or their questions and put them in the comments of this issue. I'm looking at Philippe.
Sorry, say that again.
So you had some questions. It sounded like there was some clarification required of this issue, and we're looking for someone to take this on for grooming. You know, like Matt said, Ross had already been looking into this, but Ross isn't here today. So if any of the questions that are coming out of this discussion could be added to the comments of this issue, I'd be comfortable with asking Ross if he would be able to help clarify. I don't know if Ross is going, and Thomas isn't here, I don't think Ross is going to be committed to working on first class vulnerabilities all the way through 12.9. I'm not sure about that, but since he's already started looking at this, I think it's fair to ask him to help clarify the topic.
Yeah, I don't have that information either, I can tell you. But let's try with Ross and see if Thomas is stepping in to say otherwise.
Okay. So I'm going to move on to the next issue. I wouldn't say that we were able to answer all of our questions that we expect to get through in the planning breakdown for this, so we might be looking at this one again. That being said, for the sake of time, we're getting very close to wanting to begin execution on 12.9. I don't think expecting us to make it through every single issue in this planning breakdown is realistic at this point. We're just making our best bet. So we may end up pulling this into 12.9 based on individual grooming. In a perfect world, we get to come back to the planning breakdown for this. Who lives in a perfect world? Third ticket. So notify a user in the front end when a vulnerability is resolved.
We just want to create a notification in the UI that to the user that a vulnerability has been resolved in mass.
So there's also a note in the description here that I wanted to know if, can you scroll down? There's a note here that essentially says, if we go with another issue, then we don't need to do this one.
Mm-hmm.
Where was that?
I thought it was in the
It
body.
might have been removed. Are you referring to the, I don't remember the number now. It was the system notes one?
Yes. So I was curious if that was still, okay, maybe I missed your most recent comment, Matt, if you removed that.
Yeah, so sorry. So Andy had left a very detailed comment after we had discussed, and the cleanup just lagged by about a week. So I did the cleanup on it last night.
So the long and short of it is, even once we have those system notes in place, we'll still want to have this notification independent of those.
Yep, exactly. Because the system notes are still not going to make the user aware that they need to go in and verify the resolution of the vulnerability. So we still need to kind of like ping them somehow.
So I have a question on these issues that require both backend and front end work. Do we normally split them up into two separate issues, or do we just kind of have two different, lines going from the same issue?
I think we're still figuring that out, Jonathan.
Okay.
We have historically done the latter, but we're considering options.
I believe in cases where we can actually deliver them independently, it makes a lot of sense. Where I get hesitant is when one is dependent on the other and we have to, considering scheduling between the two, or there's a lot of overlap. So I kind of look to, and we discussed this with Matt and Sam, the PMs, because I don't expect the PMs to know when it makes sense to break that down. To me, that falls more into a team grooming decision. What we would encourage them to say is if there's a way to slice the functionality into smaller pieces, independent of whether it's back end, front end. That's the hope of the breakdown. Whether we do front end or back end, I think that's sort of in the next step.
So there's a comment from Ross in here. I've linked to it in the chat, but he said it should be handled as part of 35298, which has been closed. But that was a should. So I don't know if it has actually been handled as part of that or not.
The back end work, you mean?
Yeah. The front end work won't be done. It's just the back end part of actually letting us know if we can.
So it looks like this was closed just recently in 12.8. So it sounds like it's just the front end work left to be done. We should confirm this. That being said, from a front end perspective, are we able to say that we can confidently understand the requirements and understand the boundaries of the work?
I understand the requirements. I don't know if the back end's there or not.
Right. So I think that's what we need to confirm. And I believe what you're saying makes sense, Sam, and that it's linked to this issue where Ross has already verified it on staging.
Yeah. It's just whether that part sort of came along for free with this this merge or not. I'd guess Ross would have to confirm that.
Well, I think that I don't think it has, but again, maybe we need Ross to confirm that. It's slightly out of scope there, where the creation is one thing, and it would be a soft deletion then that we'd be talking about. Because the issue is on auto creation. I don't know what the handling is for the actual removal, but I guess we can dig in then. So I can take this one.
So it sounds like it's helpful to have Ross here. Like I said, if he's not going to be committed to front end or to working on vulnerability management going forward, it's good that we start driving this and consulting with him as much as possible. Lucas, will you update this issue with the results of that discussion?
Yes.
Thanks. Wow, we made it through 3. We still have time left. Matt, do you have anything else?
No, this is all I had on the list. I think this brings us to, I think we had 5 total that we've gotten through. So feel pretty good about that.
All right. Thanks everyone for your time. I'm going to post this up on YouTube and I'll share the link. And between Matt and I will follow up with those couple of action items. And I think this is really helping in preparation for planning for 12.9. I appreciate it. Thanks everybody.
Cool.
Bye, y'all.